My name's Moises Lemus. I guess I have to pronounce it properly so people. Normally, I just tell people Moses because it's a lot easier to not explain every time. Why does your name sound funny? But sometimes I explain. That's just the way it's pronounced in the Mexican language. So, and that's how my parents named him. And a lot of people will, whenever they see my name, they'll ask, oh, how do you really pronounce it? And then I'll explain it. Otherwise, Moses. That's just easier for us here in the U.S. I was born in Mexico in 1989. I only lived my childhood in Mexico. My parents brought us to the U.S. when I was 6 or 7 years old. So I still have I really just have childhood memories of how we grew up, struggles or whatever. That's what I remember. We lived in a small town similar to New Albany. We just lived in the outskirts. So I consider ourselves, we lived in a country house, which my parents inherited. So there's a lot of farmland around us. And it's very typical. Our neighbors were your family. So I think we had like an uncle that lived behind us or next to us. And so, I grew up, part of my childhood, I grew up with my cousins and just family related, but yeah, memories from Mexico is very little, just childhood memories, playing around, maybe a birthday party here or there, first day of school. I think I remember doing like the marching band with, when you do the national anthem and stuff like that. That's really all I have when it comes to what I remember from Mexico or remember growing up. Probably have more memories when we moved to the U.S. A lot of struggles there too. A lot of people don't realize, when you, I guess, considered myself kind of just a first or second generation immigrant. Coming to a different country without knowing the language, growing up as a kid, not knowing the rules. There's a lot of struggles people don't think about. We come to the U.S. and, parents sign you up for school, you go to school, and you really don't know the language. So, it's like your first struggle, I remember, was you have to go to the bathroom. How do you tell the teacher you need to go to the bathroom when, you don't know the rules, you don't know the times, you don't know, the classes are set up differently. So, a lot of times when I see other people and see their struggles, you have somewhat of a compassion because you're like, well, you lived part of that. So when we came to the U.S., we lived in Nashville for about a year. I guess you're always like trying to, settle in and figure out, is this where we at? Is this where we're, is this where we want you to raise your family, this and that? And part of that is always driven by work. So Nashville for a year, I have a few memories, started learning the language, started adapting to school. And then a year after that, we moved to New Albany, Mississippi, and been here ever since. I started New Albany Middle School. I remember my first day of school, still adapting to it. And I remember my first day of middle school was we had a tornado warning. We had a tornado go through town. And I've always remembered that was my first day of school, and to this new town and this new system, and I remember it was scary. I remember I didn't know what to do. I didn't know when my parents were going to come. You have all these procedures you have to do, and they put us in the hallway, and you're crouching, and you have the alarms going off. I'm like, hey, never forget that. Middle school, high school. I guess even calling back or thinking back, there was many Hispanics in New Albany back then, and I've always wondered. A lot of times I feel like we adapted pretty well, and then you see other people have more. You may see more struggles. I've always tried to figure how that works, but by the time I think after X amount of years, I felt like I feel normal. This is where I grew up. A lot of people will ask me, where are you from? And I tell them New Albany. and especially when we travel outside of this area, you sometimes you get that look, like, but you don't look like you're from New Albany. So so a lot of times, well, I was born in Mexico, or they'll tell me, oh no, well, where are you really from? And so then they I guess they want to know more of the history. But I consider New Albany my hometown because this is where I feel like New Albany's shaped me to who I am, even if I wasn't born here and part of my childhood wasn't here. But I think this is what created me. So that's the way I look at it. Middle school, high school. My dad always worked. He always worked in the restaurant business. I remember a few stories that he told me. He lived in Chicago before he started raising a family. He lived in Nashville. That's where he was kind of set up. And then we came to New Albany whenever the Mexican restaurants were growing here with my cousin. And he told him, kind of convinced him to come down here and help him continue to grow the business and this and that. And that's how we ended up here. And as a high school student, I've always worked. I remember working since a young age. A lot of people remember me working from a young age. I guess with my dad being there, I always had the opportunity to, instead of being home and doing nothing, or we didn't have PlayStations, or we didn't really have video games back then. Otherwise, I probably would have stayed home. Sorry, I thought I put this on silent. But I don't know how I got stuck or got into working at a young age. It just kind of happened. It probably gave me a lot of experience and knowledge that I, kind of used later in life. But I did have to come up with tough decisions, especially in high school, because in high school it was hard to balance. First, going to school, doing all your homework, keeping up your grades, and then balancing the sports that I did, cross country, soccer, and all this stuff, and then still fit it in your work schedule. That somehow I would have to kind of rush from one place to another, and then there's a lot of times I would sacrifice not doing a sport so I can keep my job, because those restaurants, their busy times are the weekends. So I remember a lot of times I would try for the football team, and then I would just kind of decide, what, I don't want to give up my job, because they're like, well, you kind of have to work Friday nights. You can't have a football life. You can't go play football. If not, we're just going to find somebody else, and you just figure it out. So even at a young age, I felt like that put me in a position on like, well, what do I want to do? Am I interested in this or that? And I guess growing up poor, I guess I always like having that freedom of I can buy my own things. So, even back then I would go shop and I would spend my own money. And that kind of helped me at a young age, figuring out that I guess the cost of things, because that cost me X amount of hours of hard work, saving that money and then spending it. It's not like my parents were buying most of my personal stuff. By high school, I wanted to pick, because if I let my mama shop for me, she was just gonna pick whatever she found, and that's just the way that she was raised, and that's the way that we were gonna be raised. And as a high school student, even trying to fit in, you want to be normal. You don't want to be too different, because then you just feel apart. So that struggle kind of helped me kind of shape at a young age. And then I remember towards the end of high school, we had to figure out college and, what to do then. My parents not being from here and not being exposed to the educational system, we didn't have a good support from home on how to, I guess not support, but guidance, because they didn't know what it's like to be in college. They knew, I remember talking to my dad, like they wanted me to continue my education, but they didn't know, oh, you should, go to Mississippi State, go to Ole Miss. This is what you're supposed to do. We didn't know about scholarships. I knew a little bit from what I learned from schools and counselors on what they would kind of, tell you, but a lot of times they tell you things like they expect you to know so much. But I was just thinking back my senior year. It's like I was clueless when they were. I didn't know what a scholarship was. And they're like, oh, that's just money they provide to help you go to college. Well, I didn't know how much college was worth. How much, I didn't know the cost. I didn't understand the system. And oh, you actually live there. You don't have to. You have to stay there, or it's this far away, and you're more independent, and you kind of figure those things as I went. And yeah, that was a learning experience. It probably took me a year to figure it out, and then like kind of catch on and really move on with it, which we did. I went to one year to Northeast, and then I went to Mississippi State. Even the whole time I was always working, either at one restaurant or another. If I moved to a different school, I just found somewhere to work close by, and it's probably what kept me out of trouble too. Working so many hours and going to school. Didn't have. I had a little bit of a social life. I would always have to either cram it in there or make some time, and then if it's just hanging out or going to the movies or doing this or doing that. But I always had to make my time to balance the work and school. I think that's always played a good bit of my time growing up. Because at Mississippi State, it was the same thing, and it's probably a little bit harder because you're balancing. Now you're providing for yourself and living by yourself or with some roommates. So it's not like you have your mom there helping you clean up your room and cooking dinner or lunch or whatever. So now you added more things to the list, but we managed, we pulled through. Through college, I told myself, which by that time I felt I was pretty, I want to use the word Americanized. I felt like I kind of knew this, the system and what's expected as a student and a college student and what to do, and kind of start thinking about your professional life of what are you going to do after school. So I did international business. I knew I wanted to do something with business. Didn't know exactly what. At that time, I'm just kind of thinking, looking at what everybody else is doing and what are your options as you finish college, and thinking about I think a lot of people would do some kind of internships, and I did one, hated it, didn't like it. So that kind of showed me what I didn't want to do. I want to be stuck in a cubicle doing X amount of work, and being part of always working in the restaurants. I told myself through college, well, if I want to do a restaurant, because I did have some opportunities about managing a restaurant, or my current business partner, I remember talking to him, and he wanted to open up a restaurant. I was like, hey, why don't you come help me open and run this business, and we can cut you in a commission or doing this. And I told him, no, I'm going to finish my school. I remember having that conversation with him, and he respected that. It was tempting because you're like, oh, this is your opportunity. This is the door that you're waiting for. You know what I mean? You just have to open it and step in. And I just stuck to finishing my education first, and I'm glad I did. But I've always told myself when I was going through college, you know what, if I do the restaurant business, that's just going to be my plan B. I'm going to try to follow the American way and just think about a professional, go to the cities, work with a company, see what that's like, and kind of, that's what you're supposed to do. And I honestly, I almost did that. I think I had an offer to go work with International Paper in Memphis. The year that I graduated, but that's also the year that we had the opportunity to open El Agave and here in New Albany, and part of that, making that decision, because I remember that's a big moment in my life where when they kind of tell you you run into a fork and you can go left and there's this, or you can go right and there's this, but there's really no going back. Whatever you decide, you just have to commit to it. And I chose Plan B instead of Plan A. as crazy as it sounds, because I think during that time I was kind of committed for the previous year or two. I was pretty determined about going with Plan A. So that's where I was. I graduated thinking this is where I'm going to do. Whether I was thinking either banking or I think I had a couple of offers with insurance companies, and then international paper sounded tempting because it kind of, you didn't have to be stuck here. They can send you to other places. You can go there, go here, and being bilingual. I always thought that was an advantage, and why not use it? A lot of companies do like having people that can speak multiple languages because you can connect with certain customers, or if they do business international, it makes sense. But anyways, so I didn't went that route. I don't know where I would be if I went that route. We started El Agave, our first restaurant here in New Albany, the year I graduated from college, which, thinking back, I think it's crazy for me to think about how I managed to pull that off and open up a restaurant I was 23, 24.
What year was that?
2012. Okay. 2012. And part of my decision was that I knew the restaurant it's a young men's business. It can be very consuming, and me finishing college, and which I married young. I married at 20 years old, but we didn't have any kids. So I knew that was another big factor in my decision. I was like, well, we don't have kids yet. I can still commit to this project because it's the way that I look at it. It's a project. You're all in, or you can't just tap into it. You got to fully immerse yourself in, especially when it's a fresh concept and you're still. You may have a vision, but it's not complete. It's not a complete picture, so you have to finish it out. So I put all really the little savings that I managed to save through college, and I still had a college loan. But we're still living the college student life. We still have roommates in Starkville, and I remember I think I was staying here with my sister and my parents, and you just kind of put all your eggs in that one basket at that point. I say the kids because that's one of the big decisions that kind of I remember thinking, well, this is the good time. If I want to do it, let's go ahead and do it now. So Plan B becomes Plan A, and Plan A is Plan B because the way that I was looking at it back then, I was like, well, if I fail at this, I still have my business degree, and I can still go work somewhere else. So that was my plan. That's why I say my Plan A became my backup plan, and luckily we never had to use Plan A, so that worked out. But once we opened El Agave, the first weekend we opened. Now I tell this story to a lot of people. My wife told me she was expecting, so now I remember thinking, you feel like a college student, even if I was already graduated. Your lifestyle, you're still in that lifestyle, and I'm like, what do you do now? All my little savings are spent. I'm looking at my first paycheck. I'm hoping we can get a paycheck, and I'm the owner. And so we ended up figuring that out. It kind of did give you some pressure. It's good to have that type of pressure though, because it kind of keeps you on top of your game. Because now you're like, I can't mess up. So now you're like, okay, we don't want any mistakes. We don't want any, we want to make a good impression. This is I have to make this work. And I think, when I don't know how people think whenever they open up a business, and, I always go into it like it's not a guaranteed success. Back then I felt like I didn't have a choice. I didn't have, failing was not an option for me. So I think it's having that amount of pressure to really put in all the work and put in all the, I remember going to sleep thinking about what you're doing the next day, all the things you could have done different, waking up and you're still processing all that stuff. There's no breaking away, especially at the beginning. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize when you do open up a business. And like, when I say you're fully committed, that's all you think about all day. There's no social life of like, well, let me just take a break and let's go eat out and have fun and think about something else. No, I mean, that was all I was thinking, day in, day out. And I think part of that's what kind of helped me shape, my business model. Because I knew there's a lot of stuff that I learned from business school and in college, but you look at all these scenarios and all these companies, all the right decisions, all the bad decisions, and it's just information. I think it was very important, if you can translate those, everything that I learned in college and apply it to what you do, that's probably what helped me the most. We would study cases from companies. I did international business, so a lot of times it was funny and amazing to watch that you have these successful companies, they're multi-million-dollar companies, and then they would expand to, let's say, Mexico. And a lot of times, just because it made sense here, it wouldn't make sense there. And a lot of them were kind of silly, like even like a name of a vehicle. Certain names, may work here, but you have to understand the culture there. And a lot of times they would, I remember a car company, I don't remember the name exactly, but I remember the name of it didn't make sense, and it was something silly that people were not going to buy that just because of the name. And it was like, even all these big companies that spend millions of dollars on marketing and have all these CEOs, they would miss a small detail like that. And so a lot of times you think, well, if I know we're going to make mistakes, but at that point I'm like, I can't make any mistakes, I have to make this work. So it was a lot of pressure. So we started Agave. I don't want to say we struggled the first year, but we did. I know what it feels like to put in all the work and not pull a profit at the end of the day. I know what that feels like. Thinking you're making all the right moves, all the right decisions, and you're still not seeing the reward, can be taxing. The first year of El Agave, I don't know if people remember this. We weren't as busy as we are now. We built that business. The first year, we were barely, paying all our bills, and every once in a while we're like, okay, we're making some progress. Oh, here's a profit. Yay, let's celebrate. Okay, back to work. And I think after the first year, we really took off. Started just building, it really was just building blocks. We started, we created the base, and then we kind of showed people, we believe this is a better service, we believe this is a better food, and people just started reacting to it. And I think after year 2, we were really I would consider it more like where we needed to be. And I think after year 3, we decided, well, if we can make it work here, can we look at somewhere else? And that's where we looked at expanding into Oxford. That was year 3, 2016. And which was another different, there's a different experience, because, New Albany was your first business. You get a good hold of where you at as a company, and now we start growing. Which I will say, thinking about what we do, I've been in business for 2012, 12 years, 13 years.
This will be 14.
14 years. Because even when I talk to people or students, they kind of ask you what your day-to-day is. And, even going back, all the way back then, every day for me is different. Every year is different. So once I figure out because part of my struggle is balancing my work life, dedicating, because I have 3 kids, I have a family, so you have to balance that out. You can't be too selfish and think all you can do is work. Well, no, not if we're growing. So I have to make adjustments every time. So as soon as I figure out New Albany, and okay, well, let's do Oxford now. You're back to square one and creating this concept. And I remember being intimidated to go open up a different market, because now there's more competition. Oxford, so it's a much bigger town than New Albany. And, I think Oxford probably gave me a little more confidence because we went there and, everything that we applied, all the different rules, everything that we would train for, people responded immediately to us. So that kind of gave us some confidence on, well, maybe we are going in the right direction. Maybe I am right about making these changes and, stuff like that. So Oxford really I think Oxford really put us in the map because there's so many people from different places that come to Oxford. So we've always had a lot of business opportunities come out of Oxford because I guess people started to know who we are. Then from that we went to South Haven and Tupelo, which South Haven was a different experience. Each restaurant brings different challenges. South Haven was COVID. We opened South Haven March of 2020. And, open up the restaurant. We knew there was something coming. We knew, because that's all you heard every day. And, as a business owner, you just have to be ready to react. And I mean, that's all you can do. So, I remember we were about to open and they're like, well, what if this COVID thing really happens? Is it going to be as bad as they think they are? Or, at the end of the day, we're like, you know what? Let's just let it come. But we're not gonna hold this project back, because I think that the big decision back then was like, well, why don't we just wait and let COVID come and go, and then we open up the business, because COVID was such an unknown factor, and so it's a decision you make, and like I said, part of, I guess, being a business owner, once you commit to a decision, you just have to follow through with it. We opened up South Haven at 50% capacity, which was not bad. Opening phase, you want to, for me, you want to slow start and then build. Governor shuts down all dining. We had, I don't know, $30,000 worth of food in the cooler. All these employees we just hired. It's like, what do you do then? So that was, it was definitely a learning experience. It ended up working out. We took a hit, we took a loss at the beginning, but South Haven proved to be one of our busiest locations once we got going. And so,
What did you do?
I remember we paid. We didn't let go of any of our employees. We paid for their rent, and we told them, don't go anywhere else. There's food here. Come eat. And then hang tight, because we don't have a timeline. At that point, you're just dependent on whatever the government does. And I remember, I think dining was shut down for a month or two, and then we went to go only. I think it was a month. And I hated that because I didn't want, as a new restaurant, I didn't want your first experience just being to go, because dine in it's an experience. It's not just the food, and there's more things that go with it. The ambience, the music, just the high energy, and I hated that. But it was that or nothing. So that's what we did. And we had but I mean, once I think a year after COVID, things came back to it. It was never really normal, but South Haven proved its own challenges because it was a location that ended up being a lot busier than I would ever dream of. So that brings different challenges. Running a high capacity restaurant and at that speed, where you're a full restaurant, and now you have a 1 hour wait. I feel bad for people that it's going to be an hour and 30 minutes, and how do you tell that to people, and how do you make yourself more efficient? So well, what South Haven taught me was that different restaurants have different speeds, where New Albany people can come eat, and they can come sit down and eat and go back and do their own thing. South Haven was a little different. People would sit there longer than we anticipated. So like I said, each restaurant has taught me different things, and the more you do it, the more things you learn, and the easier it gets, because now there's all these factors that we already know. So now what can we do to prevent this, or what can we do to help this situation? It's not, don't let the customers control you, but there's a lot of things you can do to control your customers that are coming in. and be in control the whole time. I know that may sound crazy for some people, but there's little stuff that you can do and make a difference. So, and I think that's part of what we've learned over the years, and I think that's what separates being a restaurateur. Or when I say restaurateur, is like this is what I'm gonna do for my career. So there's a lot of things that we already learned. You check them off the list. Whereas people that come into this market or into the industry not knowing all these little unwritten rules, or because there's really no guide on how to open up a restaurant, right? I mean, it's all based on experience. So the more you know, the less mistakes you can make, the more efficient you can be. And this industry is not very forgiving, so you don't want to make too many mistakes. As soon as you walk in the door, there's a lot of things you can do right, and there's a lot of things you can do wrong. And if you don't have the experience to see those, to know how to train employees to prevent making those mistakes, that's what makes it. Sometimes makes it or breaks it. So with El Agave, we were in South Haven, Tupelo. At that point, because I also, part of that decision at that time, I'm trying to figure out, we're growing, how big do we want to grow? It's like you don't want to work 7 days a week and have this, even if you're successful, you don't want it to consume you. So we just I've always told myself to space out whatever projects we're doing. So once I settle, South Haven and Tupelo, and I'm like, okay, I have a hold on my life schedule, my work schedule. I have time to go to the gym, and then you start another project, and then you have to I still make sacrifices, After Tupelo, we did open Nico's. Nico's was after Tupelo, and that was a fun little project. I remember some people in New Albany wanted me to do something, and we had some previous offers. Hey, why don't you do a bar in downtown New Albany? We need this. I think Nico's was just the right timing, the right opportunity for me to do something different. It brought me down to the drawing board. We saw what the Rainy did, and I saw what we supported the Rainy. We would go with their need, and we enjoyed it. But I could also see, as somebody who grew up here and knew the customer base, I was like, well, I can see people liking it for this reason. I can see people not liking this for these reasons, and so I felt like I had a good knowledge or a good idea of what I wanted to provide, and I probably over catered to the folks in New Albany, even if they don't see that. And I also, Nico's, to me, I knew I couldn't depend on just the New Albany customer base. So I was hoping we can draw people from outside of New Albany. I feel like we did that, and I think that's been part of our success, that, that people were willing to, drive from Ripley and eat here with us. Because with El Agave, that was part of the success too. I mean, if you drive there, I remember driving Friday night, little details, just looking at people's tags. There's out of 10 tags, 5 are from New Albany, and I can recognize 2-3 of their tags, but there's folks from all over the place, and that really kind of paints a picture of, like, you're not just doing New Albany. You gotta be able to cater to people, the surrounding areas too. We did that. I think Nico's is 3 years now. But I think I stayed with Nico's, just focused on that for a good 2 years. It took us really a year to really. It takes about a year to really see if you're going to be successful or not. I remember I've told some people, and I remember seeing their expression, because they can look at Nico's and say, "Oh, this is successful. Oh, are you doing it? You're killing it." And I'm like, "Well, yeah. Well, we didn't pull a profit this single year because we were investing. I was spending money on 3 managers to guarantee the success of that business. So, yes, it probably would have been profitable, but we weren't being profitable because we were overspending on labor. Because I wanted to guarantee the service. I was kind of scared to fail. So I'm like, I can't. I got to make this work. So, and that's where it probably what makes you kind of having so many different restaurants that I could do that because I don't depend on this business. So now you can make this stronger in the beginning and guarantee the success. And I don't care about, I'm not doing it to, for my profit, for my own benefit. I was like, let's make this work. If we make it work, we can balance that out at the end of, at the end of the line or whatever. And that's the way that I looked at it. I'm glad that I did because that can really, you're making all the decisions. So if you make the wrong decision and if I hadn't thought about it that way, we probably would have made more mistakes and, maybe Nico's wouldn't be as successful as it is now. I don't know. I can't really go back and, what could have happened if I hadn't decided this. I'm just glad that I did what I did because my projections kind of went with it. So, after Nico's, now we have a restaurant in Tuscaloosa, which that proved a different challenge because Tuscaloosa is 2.5 hours away. And now it's so different how we open those restaurants because I have to guide them, but I can't be there physically day to day. So it's scary, but it's fun also because there's a bunch of ideas and concepts, and I have people with me that have been with me so long that they know what the company is and what we are, who we are, and they can apply those. So it's been fun watching that. We're about 2 months in, and people in Alabama have accepted the concept pretty well. So that's kind of where we at with all the businesses, and it's been a fun ride. And like I said, every year for me it's been different. A lot of times I have to make adjustments on my personal life because I can't really plan what's going on tomorrow because there's so many unknown factors. I just have to be ready to react. So whatever is needed. So now a lot of our focus now is growing up our kids, and now I get to watch them, and especially now with Santi being in middle school, it's so different. My experience growing up in this town and going to school and watching him, it's going to be such a different experience. So now I have to figure out how to watch these kids grow and kind of guide them in the right direction and see what decisions they start making, and so it's makes me feel old thinking about it, but that's where we at now. So
what are the ages of your kids now?
12, 10, and 4.
Yeah, they'll have a totally different life than you did.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they'll have different struggles, but I consider them probably more like a third generation immigrants. I mean, we take them, we'll travel and take them to Mexico and Colombia. We expose them to different cultures, and it's kind of fun showing them this. They don't care as much as we do, but it was fun showing. Hey, this is where I grew up, and this is. I mean, we just appreciate what we have in the U.S. because this is a lot different, and but it's fun to exposing them to even the difference between Mexico and Colombia. My wife's from Colombia. It's 2 different cultures. The food's different. The people are different, and I'm glad that we're able to share that with them. And because I feel we do travel a lot, and I believe that's always helped me with the restaurant business. Because I mean, when we travel, you're always looking at restaurants, and we're always trying different restaurants. And part of my the locations where we go, restaurants do have a big influence. A lot of times we're always looking at what's trending, what's not, and we use that a lot and apply it to our menu and to our even if it's cocktail drinks from the bar or different food ideas. And of course, we travel with the kids, and we kind of expose them, probably spoil them more than anything, because they get to see all this different stuff. But I mean, that's what kind of makes it, I guess, not being so, I don't say close-minded, but traveling did help me think differently, because there's Mexican restaurants, Mexican food here in Mississippi is one thing, but I mean, you hit a different region in the U.S. and it's totally different. So a lot of times I'm like, man, this is so good, but would this really work in Mississippi? So a lot of times we'll take, even if what consider a good idea, and then I could probably just twist it and fuse it with whatever I think people would like it here. And that kind of keeps it interesting in my end, because you're always working on your concept. You know? We'll make changes in our menus every couple of years and maybe add a couple of things, and most of them are successful. And then there's a couple of things like, we went back and what was I thinking? I will I will say, I think traveling and exposing yourself to different regions in the U.S. or even internationally, there's a lot of things that you learn and expose yourself to. So to me, it's, even if I'm traveling or even if it's for work, I can sit behind a bar and I can look at their structure, I can look at the way their bar's set up, and there's so many things you can see, and you're like, that's such a great idea. Why didn't I ever think about that? Or sometimes we may be struggling with something and I didn't know the solution for it, but it's like I can sit and look at somebody else's bar, for example, and I'm like, that's the solution to my problem. I was like, why couldn't I think about this? And I've always, if people aren't looking at other people, I mean, you're not learning, and there's so many different things we can do to make things better. I mean, it never ends. I mean, like I said, we've been doing this for almost 14 years, and we're constantly making changes, and which employees don't like changes, but it's like, we have to try this, and maybe we can do this better. We can always improve on something. And maybe that's what makes it so hard about a restaurant, because if you sit still and just put everything in repetition, you're not growing. You're gonna hit a stale, and then once you hit a stale, it's gonna go downhill from that. And I always try to let's try to be careful and keep evolving, keep making changes. It's easy to just, we got this business concept figured out, let's not touch it, let's not make any changes, because this is what works. We're not like that. I'm always like, what can we do different? Where we don't have all the solutions, so I feel like we can always make something better. So that's the way we run the restaurants. That's the way all my sit downs, my meetings with my managers, we're always, let's try this, let's make some changes. Or a lot of times, just by listening to them, they're telling me what's wrong. We try to make them already thinking about the different solutions, and then we go to, well, maybe this can work, A, B, or C, and then we talk about it and then make a change. And now it's not just me making decisions. It's really, right now we're having sit downs, we study the situation, and then they're part of the solution. So it's been, I guess, having so many restaurants, they're all different scenarios at each location, so I have to be very open. And just because something works at one of my locations doesn't mean that's the solution for another location. So I have to work with them, and now they're part of the, part of talking about the problem and looking for the solution. So, and that's kind of where we at now, and it's a lot different from where we got started, because everything when we got started, it was all me. So now I got great managers, and we're constantly having meetings and sitting down and just finding the solution to the problem. That's all we do now. And then we'll see the next couple of years. We always have projections. Luckily, like Ava, there's always possible expansions, and it feels good to be wanted. People reach out to you and they're like, "Oh, we love your concept. Come over here with us. Here's a great location." And it's a good feeling. It's a good kind of like pat yourself in the back. Oh, we're doing good. But we try to be careful how we expand and how fast we grow, and because it's not easy. I don't know. I've always questioned myself, even at this point. How would I take failing? How is that going to change me as a person, as a business owner? And I've always thought about that, because I'm scared to fail, because I don't know how that would change the way that I think. And luckily we haven't reached that point. we'll just have to figure it out, if that ever happens. But that is something we always, look at when you're expanding and you're investing in all these ideas and thinking this may work, and then what if it doesn't? What do you do then? So, that's a lot what we do. We stay busy here in town too. I mean, we try to stay involved with everything that happens here. We care a lot about New Albany because this is where I grew up. So it's hard to say no if you're able to help and be part of this or be part of that. So, and I think I guess being in a small town community, I mean, you are expected to help and contribute here, contribute there, and I've also learned how to, just because you can sponsor this and that, a lot of times what do we really want to, what's our idea of helping people and sponsoring this? And because I sponsored a lot of stuff that I was like, man, do we really? Is that really what we're here for? And you start questioning all these things, and that's that's part of the growth. There's probably in year one, I didn't know the answer to those questions I was asking myself. It took a lot of years of experience and, a lot of things that we probably should have done, a lot of things that we shouldn't have done. But I feel like, we have a good foothold on where we want to be. So,
have you ever thought about what the impact of your businesses has on this community?
I guess yes and no. Because I'm so focused on what we're doing, and sometimes it kind of takes a minute to put yourself outside of your lane and just kind of, I guess when I have a little free time, I do kind of question what do people see and how they look at us and how they look at this. They look at Moises or they look at El Agave and what do people think? I mean, it's I tell myself, well, you're stupid for not asking yourself those questions. I think it's important to know where you stand and what people kind of perceive. Because if I just focus on what I think, it's too narrow-minded. It's like I want to be. You want to be exposed to what other perspectives are, and I think that's something I've learned over the years. That when we look at a problem, I tell my managers, I make things up just because it makes sense in my mind. It's like, hey, I apply the 360 rule. There's 360 degrees, 360 different perspectives. So there's so many different outcomes. It just depends how you look at it. Because if you look at it this way, it makes sense. So, we try to look at things different, so we can have a full evaluation and then hopefully come up with the best solution. I apply that to everything else. And a lot of times, like, what do people see? And because a lot of times,
what do you think they see?
I don't know. It's hard because a lot of people don't see how much work you do. I know people that are like, oh, Moses got it made. And I was like, oh, well, you still don't understand all the struggles that we have. And it's not. Some people. I know I get some vibes like, oh, you get some comments like, oh, everything you touch turns to gold. You got the golden touch. I'm like, sure doesn't feel like it. It's not as easy as that. There's a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice that came behind that a lot of people don't see. I think I just see it. I've looked at it the way like, our success has been just a series of making the right decisions and avoiding the negative decisions. Yes, we've made mistakes, but we've learned from them, and I try not to make the same mistake. And to me, that's what created the growth and being just successfully one after another. That's the way that I see it. People may see it differently. Yeah, there's definitely no golden touch. I don't feel like it. It's not as easy as that. But some people may look at it like that. I don't know. We try to stay involved and help, especially with the schools. Schools and churches are big on what we do. you know, and now with our kids and whatever they get involved in, you know, a lot of times we're gonna feel committed to support whatever they do too. So I'm sure that's gonna play a big role with us.
How many employees do you have in New Albany? Approximately.
New Albany itself, we're probably about 80 employees here in town. You know, we have the liquor store, and we do a little bit of construction here and there, and which that place, people don't realize how much maintenance goes behind a restaurant. It's crazy. But yeah, in New Albany, yeah, about 80. It's a big number, a lot of employees.
You're a big support for your employees too, don't you? Help them?
Yeah. Over the years, we've you see some people struggle, so a lot of times you're like, oh, we either guide them in the right direction, or we've remodeled some properties, and I've done some owner financing, and it keeps them in line, and they have a goals to meet, and I feel like a lot of times people need that, and it's been fun to watch that too, be part of that. And it's really, when I'm doing just the restaurant, I never thought I would be doing that, and it's just kind of worked out. Same thing with the liquor store. I never thought about owning a liquor store, and then it makes so much sense once, especially having multiple locations. It was just a perfect opportunity, and did that and learned a lot from it, and it's part of what we do now.
What do you want to do next?
I don't know. There's no telling.
Rest.
Well, it's. I enjoy the restaurant business. There's a lot of people. It's probably one of those industries that if you're not passionate about it, you're gonna get burnt out. Because there's a lot of people that do get burnt out. They get overcommitted, and you forget to check yourself and balance your work and life. That's a big part, because if you get burnt out, like I said, if you're not right in your mind, mentally and emotionally, if you're not balanced, you're gonna make those mistakes, because now you're not looking at the problem like the way you're supposed to. You have to look at it with a healthy mind. I feel like that's a big role. So once you start making the wrong decisions, and then you deal with the consequences, now you have extra pressure. If you make the right decisions, it runs smooth and makes it easier, and it opens up the door to growth. And that's the way that I look at it. It may make sense for some people, and some people may just think that's, I don't know, crazy. I don't know. But that's the way that I see it, and that's the way that's kind of how I live with it. So, I don't know what's next. I think once we opened, when we got up to 3-4 locations, I was at a point where if we continue to grow, I need to make changes within our company, which created more upper management roles. And, because I couldn't keep growing if it's just me doing everything. And there's a learning curve that I'm still learning about that. Because now I need people that can pretty much do what I do in different locations for us to keep that door open for growth. And at that moment, really Nico's was like a stopping point, because I was like, well, I can get away with Nico's because it's in my hometown. But that kind of showed me, because I try not to be, I'm not very involved with the day-to-day operations at Nico's. I kind of let them do their own thing, and I just kind of watch them from off to the side. And part of that is also just a test of, hey, can we really do this and continue to grow? I've had several offers about doing a second location for Nico's, and maybe we will one day. I don't know. But I do need the people, under me that can work with me and make this. Because at this point, I can provide a lot of resources. We have a lot of connections, a lot of business connections that we have that makes us strong. I can share those with people. They just have to help me with the day-to-day operations and the day-to-day training and the hiring and the firing and you're doing this wrong. Let's the correcting. there's a lot of things that, for example, I always tell this one story that even when you're training people, even if it's their first or second job, we try to teach them our standards, but a lot of times I remember training hostess, and you're training young kids that everybody is raised differently. Everybody has different standards. And I remember early on in my career, I remember training host or hostess that we hired, and some are more shy than others. So sometimes you can tell them how to do a job, but if they're, what's the word I'm thinking of? If they've been sheltered, there's a lot of things you have to train them in a certain way. Or if it's somebody that's maybe a little more outgoing, well, they're easier to train and they adapt faster. And there's people that probably weren't taught the right manners, and hey, this is how you properly greet a guest. It's not just whatever you think, and and we're not really judging. It's just we've been exposed to that. So a lot of times it's just because you give somebody instructions, you really have to understand who they are as a person when they come in and work for you, and then you have to evaluate that, and then try to make sure they're connecting the dots that you're training them to. I just remember I had to tell somebody like just basic manners, and I'm like, I never, how many people go into a business thinking when you hire, even if it's a young adult, there's a lot of things you think they already know, but that's not the case. That's not always the case. And we always have to kind of step back and think about those things, and that's why it's so important to have so many meetings with managers, because they can just, they fall into the repetition of, even if it's hiring and firing, sit back, evaluate, and then make those connections, and then I think that's what makes it or breaks it sometimes. So a lot of people don't think about all those things when you're hiring, or we're hiring people every week, so it's like you have to you have to know how to hire, and then you have to know how to train. It's not as easy as just, oh, you want a job? Okay, let's sign you up. Check.
Start tomorrow.
Start tomorrow, and then expect that everything's going to be perfect. No, it doesn't work that way.
How old were you when you first started working?
Probably about 12 years old, maybe.
So who developed you as this young kid working in a restaurant?
Well, my dad always, even when I was, even at that age, I remember I was just, I don't know, busting tables or helping in whatever way I could. Which back then it was just, a little more, I don't say informal, but since it's a family business, you just kind of.
This was Mi Pueblo.
Yeah, this is back in Mi Pueblo. But I remember even like my dad, even at that young age, I would tell my dad, hey, I'm hungry. It's like, and he's like, cook you something. I'm not cooking for you. Because now, even he's my dad, he's the kitchen manager. He's got employees, and I'm like, I guess as a dad, he's like, well, you don't want to spoon feed your kid the whole time. And I remember at that point, I'm like, I've watched people cook. I don't know how to cook at 12 years old. So a lot, he probably would have taught me that at home if he wasn't part of the restaurant business. But he did teach me those certain values even in the work life, because that just happened to be where we were. And I remember trying to figure out how to cook, and at 12 years old, and burning myself, cutting myself, because there's a lot of things that I didn't know that I had to learn. You watch people and they'll give you hints, and you have to bring in your fingertips. You're gonna cut your fingers off if you don't. Well, that makes sense. But but there's a lot of things you learn as a young kid, and that's But I just remember that one time that he just told me, because I was just kind of like, oh, I gotta cook for me. And that was. But thankfully, I think I just adapted and learned.
He didn't want you to be that spoiled brat in the kitchen.
Oh yeah.
And then dad cooking for him.
Yeah, especially in the kitchen. It's just a different subculture inside the kitchen, and if you haven't worked in the kitchen, you probably don't know it. But there's a lot of respect that has to be earned and not given, and that's just kind of that unwritten rule. You don't clean up after yourself. You make a mess, nobody's going to clean after you. Everybody's here working, just, little stuff like that. But it's a good experience. I mean, I would be terrified to have a 12-year-old in my kitchen and,
Now you do have a 12-year-old.
We haven't put him to work yet. We're probably going to wait till he's more 14, 15. Things change. There's more, you think about all the liabilities, all this other stuff. So it's different. It's going to be a little different, but yeah, it's coming.
Do you have a young Moises working for you right now? Do you feel like there's somebody that's you're kind of mentoring?
No, it's hard to find, because I've asked myself that exact same question, especially when we're expanding and growing. I've came to realize that it's you're gonna have different variations, and even my current managers that are growing, they all have different qualities. But I told myself, you're never gonna find somebody that can do the things exactly how you are, because what created me, it's experiences and certain things that you can't replicate that. Either being exposed to a kitchen at such a young age and having that work life, the struggles that I went through. I do have young managers. They have a lot of potential. They've just been raised differently too. It's a different generation. A lot of times, the technology you're exposed to, a lot of times it does make you have good qualities, but they lack in somewhere else. And I told myself, I'm not going to find somebody that, a replicate of me. I think that's never going to happen. Hopefully we're going to find a better version of it. And that's what we're hoping for, to be honest with you. Right now we're just constantly training, and, we're training a lot of managers to hopefully, have the company grow, and they're going to grow with us. So and that's where we're at right now.
What do you think would be the most exciting business venture to go on? And I guess within the restaurant industry, if somebody were to come to you with the most, what would you think would be the most exciting thing?
To me, probably my goal, or, thinking about that question, being, I don't want to say the pinnacle of your industry, but I feel like we're a standard, but we're nowhere. We're the best Mexican restaurant. There's a lot of concepts that are amazing. Memphis, Atlanta, Vegas, Miami, this and that. I mean, it'd be awesome. The ultimate goal would be to have, this cool concept that, that you can. It has to be in a metro area where because you're just exposed to, but being that top quality, having everything, having I don't say the perfect restaurant, but having probably the perfect concept. Not the perfect. The perfect's not the word. Being the best concept there is at the moment. Being this is what people talk about when they went and traveled to this city. Because that's what we look. We look at a lot of those concepts. There's a lot of concepts. There's a concept in Atlanta that I love. There's always new concepts. Big cities like Vegas and New York and Miami, great food scene. I mean, it would be great to reach a concept like that, but that's going to take years, probably another generation for us to do that. But that's kind of what drives you, though, because that's what you're looking at those models and that is so cool. Maybe we can create something like that.
Would it be Mexican?
Probably either a version of it. Even there are certain regions where Mexican food is so different from what it is now. Even cities, you're going to find different variations of it. There's a lot of fusions too. There's a lot of Asian and Mexicans mixed in together. I've seen those around. There's a lot of there's some nice high-end Mexican, which can be, different. You can have Mexican flavors and, a prime ribeye that goes along with it, and it's not your typical what we're used to here with the baked potato. It can be paired with different variations of Mexican chilies, like the poblano pepper that is more of a side. There's fusions like that, and we're always looking at stuff like that. And one day we'll probably introduce a couple of ideas here and there, but just going back to the question was, that would be one of those goals that you would want to build up to, and El Agave wouldn't be that. It would have to be a different concept, which doing Nico's does give me some more confidence, because you're like, oh, well, we can do something other than El Agave. So now we can, you're exposed to different things, so you're not stuck to just one lane. So and having different partners would probably help him bring more ideas. Definitely need to be, it would have to be something where there's a professional chef behind the lines and actually helping you shape that concept and putting it together. And a lot of restaurant groups do that. There's some that have two, three different variations of their concept. This is how they started and grew, and then they expanded over to this, and now they're trying this new concept, which they have all the resources and stuff like that. That's probably something I would aim for eventually. We'll see if we ever get there. And I've had a lot of people would ask me, "Oh, are your kids gonna continue to your business?" We don't know that. We don't expect them to. We want them to be able to. They're gonna decide that. I feel like we can kind of forecast what we think, because all our kids are different. My wife she's a one. She grew up. She didn't have any brothers and sisters. She's a one kid, and I grew up in a family of 7. So all my siblings, we're all different. Our kids are all different too. I feel like my oldest, he's probably not going to be part of the business. I don't think the restaurant calls him. Ellie Mae, you can tell she gets a little more interested in it. And Nico, there's no telling with Nico. He's just a wild card. You just never know. So, but we don't, I've seen a lot of, when I look at other restaurant groups and restaurateurs, and even in the Hispanic culture, it's very common for the kids to be expected to, not even just the Hispanic, even in any culture, you kind of have that expectation that if you have a successful business, you want your kids to follow up with that. I feel like I don't want to expect that from them. If they want it, I feel like that's going to be their initiative to put in, and then we'll just kind of go from there. There's been a lot of there's other groups that I saw where I saw their kids grow up in the business, and they saw how much work goes in it, that they don't want any part of it. They see all the struggles that their parents had, and they don't want any of it. So I've seen that. I've seen some were forced to work, and they just hated it. I don't want that from them. So I'll leave it up for them. I'd rather focus on the education first, I think. I would push them to go to college, and because that's what I went through, and I feel like that was what shaped me as a young adult, and kind of guided me. So, because there's a lot of things I learned in college that I apply that. I had a customer tell me one year at the very beginning, they asked me, and I almost want to quote it, because I remember because it kind of, I don't say it touched a nerve, but I always remember that one comment. It's like, hey, if you knew you were going to do a Mexican restaurant, why did you go to college? And I'm just like, well, nobody has really asked me that. But I was just like, I chose to go to college. And there's a lot of things, in his perspective, you don't need to go to college to open up a Mexican restaurant. Probably not. You could probably do, you can do it without it. But I feel like the education behind that definitely helps me process my decision-making skills, which help you generate a better outcome. So I'm thankful that I did. I guess back then I didn't know how to answer him properly, because it kind of did put me like, it kind of shocked me at first. I was like, I don't even know what to say. Should I be offended? Why did I? Did I just wasted 5 years of my life? And I don't even know who asked me that. It was just a random question, but I remember it because I just remember like, man, I never thought about it. I never questioned it. I just knew the education was going to help me with whatever I ended up doing. I knew it was going to help me, and I truly believe that. So,
you said there are 7 children in your family?
I have 5 sisters and 1 brother.
What are you in the birth order?
I'm the middle kid.
Okay, you're in the middle. So, were there siblings older than you that pursued education further than high school?
My older sister did. Again, that also has to do how we came to the U.S. at different age gaps. The younger you are when you come as an immigrant, you adapt faster. The older you are, the struggles, adapting is going to be a lot different. So, even growing up, I would always kind of joke with my sisters. My oldest sister is not as Americanist as my youngest sister. They grew up different. They lived more than their childhood in Mexico, and then the struggles were different. Whereas, my youngest sister, she was born here. She didn't understood, how, the struggles of coming here and adapting. You grew up in this country, so it's different, very different.
Is your brother the oldest? How old was he when the youngest was born?
Let's see, if I was 6, so when we came to the U.S., he was probably about 10 or 12. So he was almost a teenager. And when my youngest sister was born, he was probably, 18?
Okay.
So it's a big gap.
Yeah, that is a big gap.
Yeah. But, I mean, it does kind of help me understand the different variations of it, because, we can just look back and, and I can look at my struggles were different than their struggles, and how the different outcomes. So, yeah. So
your sister that's older than you, she went to college also?
Yes. So, yeah, we both follow the same steps. Northeast, Mississippi State. She smarter than me. She graduated with chemical engineering, and she worked for Shell there for several years. I don't know what she's doing now. So we both had a similar path. She went with option A when I was telling you about option A and option B. I went with option B. But yeah, and my other sister, she went to college, and I think she's still trying to figure out what she wants to do. I don't know. They're all different. Nobody decided to stay on the restaurant, except for me, which is fine.
And what about your mom? What's she doing all of this time?
My mom has always been a stay-home mom. Even with her, she's adapted, but my parents are probably gonna end up retiring and moving back to Mexico. They may stay here for the grandkids, and I think they'll just travel back and forth. But I think she would always I feel like she would be more happy going back at some point, or just going back and forth, which is kind of what they do right now. But she never really worked in the U.S. here. She's always been a stay-home mom, and she's heavily involved with the church too, so she helps the church a lot. She lives there, and that's her little circle. That's what she does.
Do you still have family there in Mexico where you grew up on that land?
Yeah, both of my families are considered. It's just large families. I have lots of uncles, and there's a lot of family relatives that I have never even met. We have lots of family members spread out across the U.S., and we have a lot of family members spread throughout Mexico. But a few that really stayed in that region, probably 30% stayed in that town or that.
What region is that?
Jalisco. It's a small town. It's Los Altos is the region, which is somewhat up in the mountains. Not really. It's just I just tell people that's where all the agave plants are grown. And there's small towns outside Guadalajara, about an hour and a half out. Beautiful place. Love the food down there. It's just different. I'll go visit just for the food. But yeah, there's family that grew up and stayed there. Never really pursued, coming to the U.S. or anywhere else. And you respect that because it's nice to go and watch people how they live down there, and their pace in life is different. Here in the U.S. we're very rushed. We're very go, and people may live differently down there, and even if it doesn't really matter the social class, it's just you get to appreciate how people live different because they may enjoy certain things of life a lot better than we do. And they're looking at us like, oh, they got it made. They have all these nice things, but we live in a very fast-paced world, and they enjoy several things a lot better than we take time to enjoy. So it's nice to see that and expose yourself to that, because if you don't, you're not questioning or asking yourself, should we really be this stressed out and put all this work in front of you and try to take it on and tackle it, or should we sit back and and enjoy a few moments before you take on the next race, because it's part of it. But the culture here, it is, and a lot of people that travel, they'll tell you that. And we know it, but it's how we live here. I don't know how to change, or you can't really change for that, I guess. I don't know. It's a very demanding, culture.
Well, and you're a very driven person.
You have to be.
Your brain obviously is wired for it.
Yeah. Over the years, who was it? I don't know if it was Elon Musk or somebody. They would take 30 seconds to make a decision. A lot of times when you're, especially with so many different decisions you make, you can't really stick around and ponder about what you think about doing. You have to take action. You have to really be, have all this knowledge behind you, all this experience, but be able to take those decisions in, I don't say fast paced, but just, don't sit on it for 2 days to make a decision, because that time come and goes, and then you have a billion other things to decide on. So there, at some point, I had to teach myself that you really have to decide. Make sure that's where all the knowledge and experience comes in. Now you have to really just learn how to pull those triggers right away and make those decisions, because it doesn't slow down for you. So, and that was probably, the more we grew, the more intense it gets. But then again, you're building more knowledge. You have more building blocks, so it does get easier. But then it's different. But I'm glad that I adapted, because otherwise, there at the beginning, I probably had more time to think about my decisions and ponder on them, and now it's like one after another. So it's different. So it is fast paced, very fast paced. But I'm glad that we did it in that way. By the time I was in college, I was managing the restaurant I was working with, and so I felt like I had a good understanding of that business. So that's why I called it my plan B, because I was like, I can do this restaurant blindfold. I can make that restaurant improve and all these different things. I knew, I understood everything that went behind the scenes, and so that's why it felt easy for me to call it a plan B. But it was probably just a unique situation because I don't know how many college. Right now I have a college student in Tuscaloosa. He's from up north, and he's doing hospitality restaurant, and because he started asking questions like, so how'd you end up in this? And he started asking me some questions. Oh, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I want to do. And back home, he works at a restaurant, and he's not Hispanic. He's American, and he enjoys the restaurant, and he's just like, he's got good experience. I was like, oh, this kid may actually do something. I don't know. Just follow the right steps.
Well, I mean, outside of your experience, if you think about like, that would be like me if I had been teaching school since I was 14 years old and taught school all through college and then became a teacher. Wow. You've already got 8 years of
8 years of experience.
Your first year of teaching, your first teaching job, you've been in a school, teaching or, anything. So, I mean, the way that you came up, you had a huge advantage.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I wanted to use this. In business school, they teach you competitive advantage. And it took me a minute to understand what that was, and I had to translate it in my own mind to understand it. And I applied that because when you do international business, you have to pick a language, and I chose Spanish. And the counselor didn't want me to do that because, you already speak Spanish. I'm like, yes, but I told I know how to speak Spanish. I didn't know how to speak Spanish properly. So I don't have an educated Spanish. And I was like, well, it's like you guys are teaching us to have a competitive advantage. And I'm like, I already have an advantage. I speak Spanish. I just don't, if I have a career within a company and they send me off to Mexico with a broken Spanish, how's that going to look?
Yeah, you can't
so
write a paragraph.
I kind of argue my way into it.
Proper grammar.
Yeah. And they allowed me to do it. And then she's like, but you have to pick another language. And I'm like, that's fair. French. But I did have to argue my way. And that's just the way that I looked at it. And I was like, yes, I speak Spanish, but it's a very, it's what I learned as a kid and then working and at home, but it's not an educational version, And I think at that point I realized, because I was dating my wife back then, and she grew up in Colombia, and she had a proper Spanish education, and she would correct me on things that, wait, that doesn't make sense. That's not a word. I think she made me realize how bad my Spanish was. Because, in the work environment, nobody's going to correct you if you're saying something properly or not. But as we were dating, she's like, wait, what'd you say? That's not a word. That's not real Spanish. Where'd you learn that? Yeah, there's a lot of slang, I guess. And, I remember talking my way into that. And I was okay with that because I did learn a lot, even if there were easy courses for me. But you still did learn, you learn a lot about, doing business properly in a culture in this country. I had a teacher from the Dominican Republic. And she was hard on me because she knew I did have an advantage of it. And they would expect more out of you as a student anyway. So, but I'm glad I did it because it does kind of teach you a lot of different things about it. So, even though people thought that I was just taking the easy way, but I understood what I was missing. So, I'm like, well, it's advantageous to speak Spanish, but I don't want it to be disadvantageous in certain situations. So I feel like I was missing that, and I went with it.
And it makes sense. A lot of people don't think about it, but
they were forcing a lot of Hispanics to take a different language, and they're like, well, you shouldn't take Spanish and I'm like, yeah, but it's not just about the language. It's about speaking it properly, to understand the cultures, because I didn't went to school in Mexico, so I had to make that point. I don't know. I had to, because I know some students, some friends. They force them to take different language. I have a friend who took Chinese. They never ended up using it. Yeah. She uses more Spanish than her Chinese. She uses nothing in her Chinese with her current work. So all that work for nothing
Yeah.
in that situation.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I did what I did. I have no regrets with it.